I just want to first state that none of the clips in this video belong to me, and they all belong to their rightful owners. But with that out of the way, let's move on with the video and on to our first suspect, Joe Biden.
Oh my goodness, ice cream butt!
The first crime I'll be pinning to Joe is trespassing, as he enters the house and sneaks upstairs. The reason I'll be marking this as trespassing rather than breaking and entering is the fact that he doesn't really break in and rather walks through the back door. Wow, wonder who left this door open, Mom. Or maybe he picked the lock, I don't know. Fret not, however, as Joe will be receiving a charge of breaking and entering as he kindly enters the house. Finally, I'm giving Joe a final charge of attempted assault. We really don't know what Joe is trying to do here, so I'm just going to say that he wants to hurt Miles. And with all of these 3 crimes, Biden Blast is receiving a final sentence of 5.3 years and a fine of $650 for breaking the window. Next up is the stalker guy from Northwood Hitchhike. His first crime is cutting the wires of Holly's car, which will bring a fine of about $1,000. I know it sounds like a lot. I know it does, and $1,000 is a lot. But trust me when I say, by the time when I'm done with this guy, that $1,000 is going to look like a buck. Next is the reason he's called the Stalker. This stalking will bring him a year in prison, along with another $1,000 fine, plus a restraining order against him. The coffee machine fiasco will send him a whole $15,000 in the hole, along with a year and a half in prison. He also breaks into Holly's room at least 2 separate times, which will be combined into 6 months in prison. Unfortunately, those previous crimes are far from the worst he's doing, and I'll need to get a bit serious. Throughout this chapter, as he stalks Holly, it's somewhat implied he wants to do something absolutely disgusting to her, which I really don't want to get into. And for these crimes, you'll be receiving 10 years in prison, along with another $15,000 in crimes. Altogether, the stalker will receive a sentence of 12.7 years, along with $32,000, along with a restraining order. Alright, let's all brighten the mood with everybody's favorite psycho ex-girlfriend, Cara. Cara's first crime will be trespassing due to walking onto Mr. Carson's private property multiple times during the chapter. Next up is her cutting the power. Now, I couldn't exactly find anything online that assigns this crime to a real name, but it's still a crime nonetheless, and Cara will be spending 150 days in the slammer along with a $500 fine. Cara's yapping during the night will land her a fine of $500 for harassing Noah. Next up, destruction of property as she knocks over Mr. Carson's epic green screen YouTuber setup, giving her a fine of $500. But how did she get in the house to destroy it? Well, breaking and entering, of course, giving Cara another 5 years in jail, along with a fine for breaking open the door. Cara's main goal during the story of Carson House is to end Noah's young adult life for breaking up with her. For her attempts, she'll be receiving a whopping 30 years in prison. Alongside this, she'll also receive another 5 for threatening Noah's girlfriend, Evelyn. Finally, Cara will be charged with possession of drugs, as Noah mentions at the end of the chapter, which will keep her in prison for 1 more year with a fine of $5,000, along with her most likely being sent to rehab. In total, Cara will receive 41.8 years in jail with a fine of $7,200 along with rehab. Alright, it's time to end this video with a bang, and the Ironbark Cult will definitely do that. Now, all these crimes aren't committed by one specific member, so rather, this will just be a collection of all their crimes rolled up into one. Alright? Let's begin. We start at the beginning of the game when Silas, whatever his name is, breaks into Jack's RV, giving him 2 charges in one, breaking and entering, as well as being a stowaway in Jack's vehicle as he makes his way to Ironbark. Once we do make it to Ironbark, we see a couple of missing posters belonging to a pair of kids. As Connor explains, they were led off the trail by a whistle belonging to a cult member. And unfortunately, knowing the cult, it didn't end well for these kids, giving the cult 3 counts of homicide. The next crime I'll be giving the cult is stalking, as what's-his-name cultist stalks Jack throughout the chapter, including when he was taking a piss. Ew. Next up, another count of homicide belonging to the camper in the Lacey Trail sector, and although it's not explicitly clear what happens to him, the scream and the cult's typical activities makes it pretty clear he's 6 feet under. Next up, harassment. For what, you ask? This thing. This experimental art piece will leave a $500 hole in their wallets. That rule-breaking camper was not the end of the cult's bloodthirsty crimes, however, as we need to throw on another count of homicide due to the disappearance of the lost camper. May he rest in peace. Later, when getting some firewood to warm up, we run into Mr. Fire Should Burn, who impersonates an Ironbark repairman, which, as Connor states,
either way, disguising as a staff member is strictly forbidden according to park guidelines.
Next, when zooming in on the cult meeting with the binoculars, we can see them lighting a fire, preparing to cook the camper to a good medium rare. For this, they'll be receiving a combined 12 years in prison. Finally, when the cult goes after Jack, it's pretty easy to say what they're planning on doing to Jack is what they're done to the others, giving them an additional 30 years in prison for attempted homicide. In total, the Ironbark Cult will be receiving 5 life sentences, along with 46.1 years in jail, a $2,000 fine, and a restraining order against them. Alright, we've gone through all 4 main protagonists of the Fears To Fathom series, but who is our number 1 criminal? Last place, Joe Biden. His housebreaking antics, while scary, aren't enough to really make him a big enough threat. However, if you think about it, his sentencing of 5.3 years is actually a life sentence. Good luck in the showers, you. Next up are the Stalkers. Although committing one of the worst crimes on this list, only place in third. However, they do place first in being in debt at a whopping $32,000 in fines. Second place, Cara, whose antics leave her just 5 years shy of her first place winner, the Ironbark Cult. Looking at the data, the antagonist in Fears To Fathom 5 will most likely have the death sentence. But guess we'll just have to wait and see. I wonder if Silas has ever seen the SpongeBob movie.